掌声欢迎 Ricky。
Hi, my name is Ricky, and before I even start the talk, I want to share with you two things: public services announcements. So iPhone 6s just came out like less than an hour ago. If you want to buy it, the best way to do it is on the Apple Store app. That way you don't have to go through the website. And then number two is the presentation actually isn't loaded right now, but what I just found out is you can do Keynote read mode. And there we go. Okay. So the topic was originally about better testing in Ruby, or how I learned to love testing, but because of some circumstances, we're actually going to talk about tools for culture and happiness, which is like an overview of the type of tools that we use in Airbnb to make our engineers productive and ultimately happy, and in which will sort of take our culture together. And so, hi, my name is Ricky, and I'm actually Taiwanese, but because I work in like an English environment, I figure it's like much easier for me to talk about this in English. And so I'm a software engineer at Airbnb. Previously, I was at Twitter and AnyArc, a small startup in Taiwan. I work on the developer infrastructure team. Developer infrastructure team, and what we do is, if you're familiar with the development process, you have development, testing, build, and deploy this and before you go to production. And our team basically handles this entire process, and what we try to do is we can either automate the boring parts or make the existing parts run faster and smoother. So let's talk about Airbnb. So if you don't know already, Airbnb is a home sharing website where you can look, you can find places where you want to live. Like for example, like tonight I don't actually have a place to live yet, so I can go on Airbnb and say, okay, I want to do Taipei, and then the times, and it will tell me like which places are available in Taipei for me to stay in. And you can also do that for like almost just about any city in the world. You can do that for Tokyo. You can do that for San Francisco if you ever want to visit me. But yeah, and then you get like really cool stuff, like you have Pikachu houses, you have like really nice designer buildings, and those are all like available to you on Airbnb. But I'm nowhere more interested about like Airbnb on the technical level. And so Airbnb is probably one of the largest Rails monoliths in the world, and like we call it the monorail. It has like 420,000 lines of code. So yeah, and we use like 300 gems. And like we have like about 5,000 commits a month. And it's kind of like, I think the speed of things is actually pretty scary. Well, it's fun and scary at the same time. But here's the thing. Here's the problem actually. So our product is constantly growing, and every day we're moving to new cities and we're adding new features. And because we have like so many ambitious goals, we need more engineers. So our engineer team is also growing, and engineers, if they're doing their job, they make changes. And when engineers make changes, okay, well, fuck. All right, let's do this the old way. When engineers make changes, they also create more bugs. Oops. And more bugs means more sadness. And the guy in the corner is like, he's so much explosion on him, he doesn't even have tears anymore. He's just dead. And then if you look at this graph, this is actually pretty representative of like how much breaking changes I've made since I've been here. Yeah, of all the explosions. Anyways, so the question is, how can we not be sad? And so there are several methods that many organizations have tried to do this, and the most common way is to write tests. But the problem when tests gives you some good level of assurance that things are still working, and you're not, and your releases are not breaking existing behaviors. But the problem with tests is that like tests cannot catch everything, and then also you end up ending up with more problems with tests. Like what happens when you need to test between services or between the front and the back end layer. So there's only an extent of security that tests can give you. In fact, like there's like earlier today there was an internal discussion about like how much test coverage we have, and we seem to have very good test coverage. We have like something like 85 or 90% test coverage, and then the new hire was like, feel pretty good about this. And then one of the older engineers like, yeah, maybe not. Like, this is the actual quote. Ricky has made quite a storied history in the past few months of green tests and massive breakages in production. So, you know, you can't always trust your tests. The other common approaches that people often take is breaking down to microservices. And the benefits of doing microservices is that you have smaller change sets, and they reduce the impact of a bad release because your changes are much more incremental. But you still have but the problem is we still have a monolith, and it takes time to break down. And even with, so what do you do? What do you do in the meantime while what do you ship in the meantime while you're still breaking down your services? And also, when you have a lot of services, you also run into new problems of how to test the dependencies between them. And so another approach is release managers, and these are the magical people that you go to, and they will before every major deploy, they will look at like what's changing and make sure it's all okay, and then they'll like they'll wave their magical wand and go to production. But the problem with release managers is that turns out like release managers are also people, and like when you end up with a problem where like let's say like do you need more release managers as you get more changes? Like a single person can only handle so much sort of context, and so like a release manager cannot conceivably understand every change, and then they only have limited bandwidth, so they can only do so much. And I mean, you can also slow down, putting more process, putting more checks, but I think that kind of defeats the whole point of like having all these in the first place. So let's just not do that. No. The other way that some organizations resort to is also blame, which sounds really nice on the surface because you get in the culture of people understanding that they've broken things, but then you end up, if you were at Don's talk, he talks about like the idea of you don't want to actually publicly shame people because then you actually break the trust between people. And then so blame actually, even though it works in the short term, in the long term it will actually compromise the trust between your team and ultimately mess up the culture. And this is actually, if you're interested in all the startup stuff, this is actually a post by our founder, Brian Chesky, about not messing up the culture. And here's the link. You feel free to go to the Medium and look it up. It's actually a pretty fascinating read. And we also have our our leader in engineering, VP of engineering, Mike Curtis, talks about the idea of like we actually want to shape good judgments in engineers, and we want to enable them. Like instead of imposing rules and restrictions, we want to give the tools and the framework for engineers to be able to shape good judgment and be able to act on them. And so what that really means is we want to build tools to help. We want to build tools to help engineers. We want to build tools so they can make good judgments, so people can trust each other's judgment, and then ultimately you end up with a better engineering organization. So let's talk about tools. Tools are great. Talking about tools helping engineers make better judgments, but there's actually two parts of it. One part is you want to provide context for judgment, and so you want to provide the information, you want to provide sort of like an overview of what kind of judgment that engineers should make. And also, once you have the judgment, like you want to empower individual engineers to act on that judgment. So there's providing context and acting on it. So let's talk about providing context first. So going back before, Airbnb is one of the largest Rails monoliths, really, really huge, really crazy, lots of people making changes. And one of the problems with such a large code base is that you end up having very granular feature sets and very granular knowledge. Like we have hundreds of engineers, and each of them know like it's impossible for every engineer to know every part of the code base. So you end up having, like, it's natural to have silos, but the problem is, like, how do you break down walls between silos? And then so one of the ways that we do it is a lot of the tools that we use will proactively communicate sort of the changes that people are making. And so we use Slack a lot. And so this is one of our Slack bots. We have like many Slack bots. Let's Code Review is one of the Slack bots that we have. So whenever you're mentioned on GitHub, we use GitHub Enterprise internally for our release, for our sort of code review process. And then it will actually ping you on Slack and give you an excerpt about like what's going on, and then asking like sort of what's the conversation like right now. So that will give you like really, and the reason why we use Slack a lot is even though the other alternatives like emails exist, is that emails and other alternatives tend to be very noisy. And so we want to use Slack for the instantaneous feedback, and we want to control the flow. And then so in the future, if we want to add like strategies into, like, for example, under what conditions do we want to notify people, we can do that. So that gives us control. But we also go back to that previous question about the fact that as you get into a larger code base, larger organization, there's going to be silos. And so, and you don't know like who to let you look at your code. And so we have this thing called a code review routing, which is the idea of, okay, let's stop the animation. Which is the idea of, okay, given a piece of code, I want to make some changes, and I want to make sure the right people are reviewing this code. And then so we have this bot, and what you do is you annotate you annotate either a single file or entire folder, and say like either this team or this person owns this piece of code. And so, for example, like, and that way, you know, you always have the right people looking at the right code. So, for example, like this is Raf is one of our engineers. He wants to disable some notification, but you know he's not really sure which team to have look at this particular review. And then so you see there's the second comment. Deployboard is one of our internal bots, and it will say, okay, it looks like you're trying to modify this particular file. We will tag this team, which will help you review this file. And then on the bottom is Igor, which is part of that team, will say, okay, good. And so the nice thing about using this kind of tool to enforce, or not rather than to enforce, but to using this kind of tool to spread the knowledge, is that, so obviously you can live without this tool. You can live with using a lot of reminders to people and such, but there are limitations to that. For example, like you can send out like a reminder email saying that, hey, these people are owning this, but the problem is organizations change all the time, and then also that people who are new to the organization will always miss those messages. And then also you need to be like, it's like you need to be constantly enforcing those messages subtly, and we rather use tools for that. So one example is recently we're doing this API migration, and so we have an API version 1 to API version 2, and we want to make sure that people stop changing code in API version 1. So rather than, so then, you know, Karen here sends out a PSA, which is a public service advisory, and say, hey, we want to continue deprecating API v1, blah, 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 and then basically, you know, comes up with a nice picture, which is, look, we're having a code freeze in API v1. But then, actually a nice way to enforce this is, since we already have code review routing, we can put a review list file in the entire API v1 directory to make sure every change is signed off by the folks working on API migration. So then you like this now. This entire message thread is now being codified in a tool that will automatically remind everyone whenever there's a change that people need to know about. So, because you can imagine without this tool, like it's very likely that in 2 weeks' time, you know, we need to send this out again because we hire a new person or some other people, they didn't read their emails. So that's the part about sort of giving context on for judgment. But the second part is we want to empower action based on the judgment. And what that means is, so previously we talked about the idea of having a release manager and how that's actually not a scalable way for an organization to go forward. But there's another problem with the idea of release manager, which is now the power is in very few selective hands. And that, like, with great power comes great responsibility. And then so you end up creating a dynamic where, release cycle is bottleneck based on those people, and these people are extremely stressed out because they have to handle everybody's stuff. And then in the really extreme case, they're the people who are to blame when something goes wrong, because other people can be like, well, you as the release manager didn't check our changes. And so we want to empower action for every engineer. And part of the way that we do that is a tool called Deployboard. And what Deployboard is an internal UI. You can think about it as like a command center for all of Airbnb's applications. And so one thing I forgot to say is Airbnb, we're a large Rails monolith. The main application is called Monorail, and sorry, it has like 420,000 lines of code. But other than Monorail, we actually have a lot of other services running in the background. We have like some Java services that powers search, some Java services that powers pricing. We have other Ruby services. We have a Python service, and so on and so forth. And so Deployboard creates a nice overview of every application in Airbnb and every build that's available to each application, and then for which target which build is deployed. Deployboard also takes care of checks during the review phase. It will look at whether this release is good, like buildable, whether the tests are passing, and whether the deploys are locked. And I'll talk about that more later. And then so our general release flow is we will deploy to staging first. We call it the next. And so if you remember from previous slide, I showed a picture of our VP of engineering. So that's Mike right there on top. So Mike is always watching you whatever you're doing. And then so when you deploy, there's actually a bot that will tell everybody that, hey, we're doing a next deploy, and then it will notify the people whose changes are in that deploy, and then it will tell people, hey, your deploy's on next, so you should probably go to next and then make sure that things are okay. And then once people like acknowledge their changes, we go to production, and then basically go through the deploy process. And then the nice thing about this UI is that it gives you a nice progress bar about the state of every box, like whether they're preparing or waiting or deploying. And then also each deploy can go down to like more granular roles of like the stages of individual blocks. And if you look at this graph, I actually took these screenshots while deploy was happening. So these are actually live updating. The UI is actually live updating as you deploy, so it's quite nice. and you're done. Like that's it. You just click a button, you click on the target that you want to go to, and you're done. But actually, there's like a little detail that I want to go into, which is so we talk about the idea of deploying to staging first, and then having people test their changes before we go to production. And then as we have more engineers, tracking all those sort of like acknowledgements of what people have checked and what people haven't checked is actually quite hard. So we have another bot, which we call Yoda. And then Yoda, actually I was supposed to practice Yoda voice to do this part of the presentation, but I didn't have time. So check your changes you must. So what Yoda does is Yoda knows when there's a new build available, and then when a new build is available, Yoda will tell people, hey, there's a new build available, tagging the folks whose changes are in those builds. And then so you see here, like there are two new builds available. One is by Shu and one is by Dimitri. And then so Shu decided that he's going to do a deploy to next, which is our staging instance. And Yoda senses, so when Shu does a deploy to next, Yoda actually knows that what's going on. And then now when the deploy is finished, Yoda will say, hey, our deploy is done, and now you need to check your changes. So you feel the force. So Shu can say Yoda checking, which says, okay, to acknowledge that he's doing the check, and then it will make a nice, cute icon here. And then Dimitri will say Yoda good to say he's finished checking his change. And then when they all acknowledge their change, Yoda will acknowledge that, hey, the build is now ready to go to production. And so we go to production. So the people behind there, they're not Airbnb engineers. It's when I type into Google and I wrote famous last words, those are the people who showed up. I think they're a band called Famous Last Words. So Famous Last Words going to production. And we have little Mike again. And then Yoda senses again that you're doing production deploy. You go through that nice progress bar and then start deploy. And when the deploy is done, Yoda will say, hey, deploy is done, everybody's happy. But that's not it, actually. Yoda teaches you, like, Yoda will inform you, so, like, how to deploy, how to roll back, what are the relevant dashboards that you need to be looking at once the deploy goes out. And this is really useful because even though, like, if you've been in the company for a while, you know automatically which things you should be looking for after deploy goes out. But that's information may not permeate always when the organization is growing. And so this is a really nice way to onboard new hires to empower them to deploy. And in fact, I think most of the new hire class will have deployed in the first week. And then the nice thing about this is that because now it's like the nice thing about all these tools is that they're all like within the company repo, and so like anybody at any point, let's say if we want to add in some other links to that, they can just send a pull request and add it there. And so, but all this is great, but what if something goes wrong? And things do go wrong almost all the time. Aborting and rolling back is actually really easy in Deployboard. So like in the progress bar UI, there is a abort button which allows you to abort and roll back. And then knowing when to roll back, this is part of sort of the last part of Yoda, which gives you all this information about like what's going on, so you can check new relic, look at the error rates and all that. And then the nice thing about this is like every engineer is empowered to act on all these, because all the information are just out there. Any engineer can just hit deploy, and if something goes wrong, immediately roll back without any intervention from any like quote-unquote ops person, and no need for approval and something. And so as a result, and you can just like once you roll back, you can just kind of walk away from disaster, and then be done with. And the nice thing about this is that because of this, like even though like Airbnb is a is a really large application that facilitates a lot of transactions, we're still able to make something like 20 deploys a day because of this, because everyone is empowered to do their own deploys, and then we're not, and because of all these tools that we have, we're not afraid to make changes that we may regret. And so, let's see. And more on when things go wrong is if you look at this build list, you'll notice that some of those are red. So that actually indicates that the build has failed. So don't deploy that build. And some of those have a red button on it. So that's actually a interface which manually marks the build as bad, and you can add some notes to it, and then which will mark the build as red. But sometimes when something goes like really, really catastrophically wrong, you probably want to prevent people from deploying like at all. Like let's say if MySQL latency is going up by like a few seconds, and you want to take the time to like stop all changes and just like make sure things are okay before you do deploys again. You can create a deploy lock logs can be used for incidents or even for like if you want to prevent weekend deploys. And then we can make logs really, really granular. We can make a global log, or we can make a log specific to one application, or we can even make a log specific to one target. And then so this way we actually are able to separate out like the good builds and the bad sorry, the good dogs and the bad dogs, and you don't let the bad dogs out. Cool. Yeah, wow, I think I talk a little bit too fast. Actually, yeah, I'm supposed to be at like, okay, I'm like 10 minutes ahead of schedule. I guess right now, is there anybody who want me to reiterate something I just said because I was talking too fast? Like, this is your last chance, because I'm gonna go for more things after this. Okay, so those are kind of the tools that we have, so with all those tools, we have the mind to one day open source them. We've actually had like, but right now, like, the problem with a lot of our tools is like a lot of them right now have like a lot of couplings that are specific to our infrastructure, and so what we want to do is like refactor them to decouple all these Airbnb specific logic, and then one day we can open source them. Yeah, but here are some ideas that are more general that you can probably use in your own application that doesn't have to be specific. And so, like, we talk about the idea of how using tools to educate people, using tools to empower people. And so one of the common things that one of the common problems of Rails applications is that you're a team that wants to build more and more features, but you don't really have time to like worry about things like, okay, I want to be upgrading my Rails version, I want to be upgrading our Ruby version. And then sometimes they can actually be really difficult to execute. So one of the ideas that we have, since we're doing like a very large Ruby and Rails upgrade right now, which is in Rails you can actually raise error on deprecation, and so that's really like what that enables is it actually enforces developers to like stop using deprecated features, and then so then that one day when you do want to upgrade to the next Rails version or the next Ruby version, that'll be extremely easy. And so when you do this, you want to make sure that you only do it in your test and development environment, but that way, so it doesn't break production. But it still will give you the benefit of enforcement. This feature is only available in Rails 4.1, but it's actually you can quite easily backport it to earlier versions of Rails. And you can also do that for RSpec to raise errors on deprecation. And like these are just like some really simple tricks to sort of help using sort of letting code to help you educate your fellow engineers so you can one day execute upgrades much easier. And so, I mean, I made a lot of talks about like all these things that we built, and so I figured like maybe it's like all the talk is actually not that valuable if we can't really show it. So like in Chinese, there's like there's an idiom say 百闻不如一见. So it's like like in English like it's like what? Something worth 1,000 words. Okay, I forgot. Anyways, like yeah, so I'm gonna do a live demo of all the things that I just talked about. So live demo. Can you hear me like this when I don't have my mic? Okay. So I've been working on a small feature. Let me see how I can do this. Oh, there you go. Great. So I've been working on a small feature on a Deployboard tool, which is if you look at the existing Deployboard tool. Sorry, crap. I'm so confused. Yeah. need to be on VPN. So, okay. If you look at the existing Deployboard tool, we have little mic here. Well, the problem with little mic is if you zoom in, oops, okay, that's too much. He's actually kind of pixelated, and because of that, he's not very happy. And so what we have is we actually have like a nice Retina version of Little Mike, and so I written some code and updated the image asset. So now we have, okay, not in this one. Let me go to terminal. Okay, now we actually have Big Mike. Oh, wait, can you really tell? Yeah, so you can't really tell on this monitor, but if you look at it on the Retina display, it's like it's a lot less pixelated and it's like a lot nicer. So what we want to do is let's commit all those changes. Big Mike for culture and happiness. And let's push that. Oh wait. So then let's push it up, and now we want to put up a review. So let's go to our Deployboard, and then let's make a pull request. So, hey. Little Mike is not Retina ready, so he's sad. So let's make him Retina. So normally I would make my pull request description a lot better than this, but just for the purpose of demonstration, I'm just going to make it really, really simple. So as soon as I did the pull request, it will see like several status checks happening, which is now like, oh, actually right now deploys are locked, so I cannot merge it if I wanted to. And also we're having like several CI jobs to check like different profiles. So like some of them are checking on Ruby 2.2, which is a version that we want to eventually support, and we also have like other CI jobs to test it on our current infrastructure. And then as we refresh, those should. One thing that you notice is before that, when I was writing my description, I actually didn't tag anybody to do the review. And so what happened was one of the bots actually looked at the contents of what I'm changing, and then auto-assign reviewers to my pull request. But right now, because it's like 1 a.m. in San Francisco, nobody's actually online except for Tony, my friend. So I'm gonna tag Tony, and Tony should get a Slack notification about this change. So let's wait for Tony a bit. But let's go back to a little bit. And so we noticed that deploys are locked. So if we go into details, we can look at here. There's a status happening that says, oh well, right now all deploys are locked because it's weekend no deploy. We don't want to deploy on weekends, and then it should be unlocked on Monday morning. And so we can go look at the Ruby 2.2. Yeah. And so Tony got the notification, and so he's like, looks good to me. And you notice that I actually got a Slack notification too. And let me see if I can show it for you again. Oh, I can't. Can I show it? Never mind. Yeah, and so no, Keynote just quit it, so okay. And so yeah, as we progressed, like the build started passing, and then we can kind of wait for it. This is kind of awkward. Anybody have any questions for me right now? Or like, you can ask me any question. It doesn't have to be of my presentation. You can ask me some fun facts. Okay. Oh, so yeah, GitHub actually provides like an API for you, like webhooks for you to be able to post to, and then so like like for example, if we use like some popular CI systems like Travis or Circle, they like those come automatically, but a lot of those are custom made, and so that means like you can, like for example, like I don't think any public solutions currently exist for making locks based on like arbitrary locks, so you can make a hook for that if you want, or you can wait for a week to open source Deployboard. How much time do I have? Okay.
大家如果有任何问题的话，都可以举手发问哦。请。Sorry, are you finished?
Yeah.
With the last question.
Oh yeah. Go ahead.
Hi. Is a dashboard like a home build application?
Say that again.
Is a dashboard like a home grow application?
Yeah, this is all done internally, and this is all built internally. And so one day, so the idea was one day we will open source it, because but the problem right now there's a lot of coupling with our existing business logics, and so we want to decouple that before we open source it.
And so what's the technology behind this?
Oh, this is actually a Rails application. This is a Rails application, and the UI is Rails, but in terms of and so what happens is GitHub, we listen to all the events that come from GitHub using it's basically a worker that listens to GitHub events and then enqueues those events into RabbitMQ. The nice thing about using a message queue is that you can have multiple applications listening to that stream of GitHub events. And then so Deployboard right now publishes that event stream. Basically, it's a conversion from GitHub API to an event stream. And then so once you have that event stream, you can have other applications like Deployboard itself listen to it. And then what we do is when we saw new branches coming up, we will actually enqueue that into Redis, and then we have separate workers to start firing like CI jobs or build jobs. And for the build jobs, CI jobs just run all the tests. The build jobs, what they do is they would like do things like compiling assets, bundle all the gems, and then it'll put it into a artifact, and then which we then put onto S3. And by that time you will see this list, which is all the different which are all the different builds that we have. And for example, like and then you can look at the difference between like this build and the previous build. And so like for example, this one is just like me turning on raising error for deprecation. And then you can compare against head, or can compare against different deploy targets. And so those are the packages are in S3, and then the actual deployments, we have a separate service called Titanic that does deployments, and it's just what it does is just takes artifacts from S3 and then put it into our boxes. So Titanic is actually the port that's open source right now, but the UI and sort of the GitHub listening part, Deployboard isn't right now. Yeah.
Thanks.
So I think by now we should be done. Still okay. Yeah. So like all the CR are good. Deploys are logged, but you know, just as a bad show, I'm just gonna merge this right now, and then like, hey, merge this, and then delete the branch, and then you see this actually just showed up in Deployboard. I didn't even refresh it. It automatically closed itself. So it's a really nice UI. And then so it's gonna go through the build step again, just to make sure everything is okay. Let's see. Yeah, and so it has like, and so these are the steps. Just like bundle, npm, you know, setting up things, compiling assets, publish the artifact to S3, blah, blah, blah. And then CI is just running all the Ruby tests and all the JavaScript tests. And so eventually this should become green. But the problem is right now, like if I try to do, so like you see this deployment button is actually grayed out because our build is not ready yet. But this is actually not enforced. So like if you're in an emergency, you want to like deploy before the tests are passing, just because like you want to fix things as soon as possible or some other emergency. Like we actually let you do that, but in order for you to do that, you need to like swear that you're doing like you swear you're not actually not up to no good. And then once you do that, it will actually let you deploy. But just to be good engineers, let's wait for the build to be green. Yeah. So while we're waiting, more questions? No. Hey.
Hi, Ricky. I want to ask, Airbnb is a really big size, so when you development, how do you reproduce some bug for customer service or something?
That's not really covered here, but I'm not as familiar as in terms of the tools. I think like we have a lot of introspection tools that like give like developers and customer support like looking into like sort of their reservation details and such, but I'm not super familiar with those, I must admit. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. More questions before we go?
还有人有任何问题吗？都可以举手发言，不用害羞的。
You can ask me anything.
什么问题都可以问哦。
Okay. Well, maybe. Oh, no, it's okay.
The connection is not very good.
No, it's not. Yeah, just the build takes time too. I didn't know it's gonna take this long. But yeah, you can look at like. Let me just show you. So like, if I look at like this is show that production is deployed based on this build, and if I want to deploy my current build and if I want to look at what's the difference between that and production, I can click on the P button, and then it will show me all the different changes that I have. So it includes mic, really big, and it just changes little mic to super jumbo mic, some CSS, and so this is actually a pretty safe deploy, it seems like. Yeah. God. Let me look at what's being done. Okay, CI is still running. So maybe should I sing and dance? Because I have a question. Sure.
How long does it take to run a build for the monorail?
Oh, monorail, actually, it's usually something like 20 minutes. The actual CPU time is quite high, but pretty much almost every organization that I know that has like a really large like Rails deployment, they just end up throwing machines at the problem. So actually, that's one way we can like reduce deployment time. Oh, sorry, build time, which is like we just throw more machines. Like right now, all of our builds they run on 24 cores machines, and then like we can horizontally scale that to like 2 or 3 machines. So we end up having all the tests running on like X number of shards. So I think we're like green now, so we can actually do deployment. And you hit deploy. Shit. Did I lose connection? Oh my god. Oh, okay, good. So you can hit deployment. And right now, because there's a deploy log for a weekend, so I'm just going to override that. So no good, and then we want to go to production. So the difference that we should be seeing is that the little mic should become bigger.
And so let's keep this tab open just to make sure that this is the previous state. And so one amazing thing about all this is that Deployboard actually deploys itself. So right now we're gonna deploy itself. So let's go to production. Oh. Okay, right now it deploys are locked, so I really want to make sure that you're okay with it. I recklessly wish to deploy it anyway. And then it'll show like, okay, so now it's like allocating all the boxes, it's like preparing, and it's like, and it deploys, waiting. And then if I go to the deploys tab, or actually, if I go to the deploys tab, actually I can actually look at which role it's working on, and so there's like rescue workers, and it looks like the web is taking the longest time to be deployed, because I guess it probably has to like kill existing connections. Yeah. So we're still waiting for the last web blocks to, yeah. Okay. Okay, so we're done. That's it. So now if I reload this page, you can see that, oh, actually that was automatically updated, but like production is, now we have the latest build on production. And if we click deploy it again, this should show, okay. This is embarrassing. Oops. There you go. It really wants to make sure you're doing the right thing. Okay, so now Mike's become bigger. Yay. Yeah. And then we also have a experimental page, which we're trying to convert everything to React. And so this is the React part of it. Actually, let's deploy the Ruby 2.2 version, because we have two. Is it not working? Oh, maybe this part hasn't been migrated yet. Yeah, and can do the same thing. Yeah, so that's my talk.
给我们一点掌声给 Ricky。那谢谢他带来进来精彩的分享。那我们接下来呢，要给大家10分钟的休息时间。那请大家在4点50分的时候回到现场，我们有一个 keynote speech， 我们的 Aaron Patterson request and response。那请大家先休息10分钟。那我们
Actually, one more thing.
那我们把麦还给 Ricky。
Sorry, I forgot to say one thing. I just want to. So it crashed just now, so let's reopen it. Oh yeah, actually I don't have one more thing. Well, I just want to show you guys something more about Airbnb. So yeah. Like, for example, I'm going to Tokyo tomorrow. I don't have a place to stay yet. So you can like just type in like Tokyo, Dongjing. And then you can like look at all the nice places. Oh, this place looks cozy. And it just, like, it's a really nice platform. I hope all of you can give it a try. And if you do want to give it a try, let me know. I can give you like I can walk you through it, or actually.
I thought you were going to say you're going to give us a discount.
Huh? Well, actually, I can give you a referral code, and we both get discounts. So if you want discount code, just ask me for it. Yeah, I encourage you to try our service. Thank you.
Thank you, Ricky. And let's take a break, a 10-minute break, and we'll be back at 4:50 for the final keynote. Okay, if you want any discount or referral code for Airbnb, just go find Ricky.
We're also hiring.
Airbnb 现在正在征人哈。好，那我们再次鼓励，谢谢一下我们的 Ricky。那请大家4点50分的时候再回到现场，听我们最后的 Final Keynote。谢谢。